In this lesson, I want to show you how you can check your perspective on a rough drawing like this. And this is my preferred way of working. The reason behind this is simple. If I were to have started out with a very structured perspective grid and tried to draw the scene that I'm working on or that I'm visualizing in my mind on top of that grid, or according to that perspective, I would be restricting myself a lot in terms of just letting the composition come through and generating ideas for the final piece. I want to be able to approach this background from a more sort of natural, instinctive or like intuitive approach, rather than trying to start out very, very rigid and strict about things like perspective. I find that when you start out drawing perspective first, it kind of really tightens up the composition, and it stops you from being a little bit more imaginative. That's the way I would do it. I like to start intuitively and then add structure and perspective on top of that. What I'm going to do, I'll make a new layer on top of the rough layer, and I know already that what I'm dealing with here is 2-point perspective. I can see that I'm going to have 2 vanishing points on either side of this drawing and a horizon line that's somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to choose a red color for my grid lines and start to draw them out. Now, the important thing to note about 2-point perspective is that it's nearly always preferable to have your vanishing points way outside of your canvas or your frame. If both of the vanishing points are inside the frame or inside the drawing, it really tends to warp the drawing because it's way too tight. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to hit C on my keyboard. That brings up the crop tool, and I'm going to drag the sides of this crop out. So now I have a much longer canvas with the drawing in the middle, and I've got loads of room on either side for vanishing points. Next, I'm going to follow the general lines that are established in the drawing, like this building on the left here. Follow those lines that have already been mapped out. Now, to draw a straight diagonal line in Photoshop, you need to tap on your starting point, hold down the Shift key on your keyboard and tap on the end point of your line. This works best with a very round hard brush, one of the default brushes. It tends to not really work that well with a texture brush because of the tapering effect that you have on texture brushes. It sort of makes the line imperceptible sometimes. So what I often do is just simply draw a dead straight horizontal line, which seems to appear much stronger. And then I'll hit Command or Control T and simply use the free transform tool to rotate that line to the exact angle that I want. All right, then I can draw a straight horizontal line through here. And so that's my horizon line. And now I'm just going to complete the diagonals to the second vanishing point, following on from this main house. This is like my basic unit for the perspective. So as you can see, I'm being careful to match or diagonal lines up with the left side of the drawing first. I think choose one thing in your drawing that is going to be that basic unit that you can measure against. You'll find that you can easily change the rest of the drawing to match, rather than trying to make your perspective fit everything all at once. In other words, I'm getting my perspective as close as possible to the drawing, but I know that, for example, these buildings on the right, they're going to have to be adjusted in the next phase, but that's great, that's fine. That's what this process is all about. What I'm doing here is just mapping the grid on top of the rough drawing so that in the next iteration or the next pass, I can make a cleaned up version that's going to be matching these lines. And once you've got your simple grid established, you can hit C on your keyboard again and crop your drawing back into the original size.